Very warm welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to our viewers in North America and around the globe. My name is Mike Embley. Our top stories. Wife of one president, mother to another. The former First Lady of the United States, Barbara Bush, has died. She was 92. President Trump admits high-level talks are already underway with Pyongyang. There are unconfirmed reports that a senior U.S. official met the North Korean leader over Easter. Syria says international weapons inspectors are at the scene of the suspected chemical attack in Douma. American officials say the experts are still being kept away from the site. Hello to you. It's been announced that the former First Lady, Barbara Bush, has died. She was 92, the wife of President George Bush and mother of President George W. Bush. She was married to George Sr. for 73 years and during her years in the White House set up a foundation for family literacy, helping parents and children of disadvantaged Americans to read and to write. In her early years, she also spoke out against segregation and backed a more liberal view on abortion rights. Laura Trevelyan looks back at her life.
Barbara Bush was a commanding matriarch, only the second woman in American history to be both the wife of a president and the mother of one. She was married to the 41st occupant of the White House and raised the 43rd. Born Barbara Pierce, she met George Bush at a school dance and they married in 1945 after his service as a Navy pilot in World War II. Barbara was credited with helping his political career by keeping a card file of everyone he ever met. It all paid off when George Bush was elected first vice president to Ronald Reagan and then president.
The office of President of the United States.
Barbara wore her trademark pearls at his inauguration, confiding they hid the wrinkles in her neck. It was this honesty which helped endear her to the American public. As First Lady, she focused on promoting literacy, helping the most disadvantaged Americans.
If more people could read, write, and comprehend, we would be that much closer to solving so many of the problems that plague our nation.
During the first Gulf War in 1990, Barbara Bush spoke for the nation in calling for a speedy end to the conflict.
We're all wishing for peace. We want our people home.
When her son George W. Bush decided to run for president,
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
Barbara was back in the spotlight once again. After his 2 terms in office, she was regretting the lack of civility in public life.
I just hate it. I hate the fact that people think compromise is a dirty word. It is not a dirty word.
By the time her son Jeb made his unsuccessful run for president in 2016, Barbara Bush was a national icon.
Vote for Jeb.
Oh, yeah.
Barbara Bush was smart, tough and often plain-spoken, an influential figure in a political dynasty.
Laura Trevelyan there on Barbara Bush. She's died at the age of 92. Let's go live to our North America correspondent, Peter Bowes, in Los Angeles. Well, Peter, with Abigail Adams, she shares a very particular place in history.
Yes, only the second woman to be married to a U.S. president and to be the mother of a U.S. president. Abigail Adams, many, many years ago, of course, the wife of John Adams, the second U.S. president, John Quincy Adams the sixth. Barbara Bush, quite a unique character, and I think she certainly epitomized the notion of a family matriarch, a strong woman at the heart of the Bush family. She was really a rock in that family, advising her husband, her son, other members of their family, and I think by many accounts getting her own way. Oftentimes she was the person who laid the law down in that family and was very much respected for it.
And family insiders are reporting that she just decided to decline further treatment and spend her last bit of time at home. She was still having conversations and bourbon, apparently, on Sunday night.
Yes. Yeah, she had a final tipple, apparently, and you're right, she declined further medical care. She wanted to focus on what they described as comfort care in the final few days, and really that also epitomizes the woman. That's what she was all about. She wanted to be in control. She made that decision, and that's how she wanted to spend her final few days. There have been a lot of tributes already, as you might expect, to this great woman. President Trump leading those tributes. He has issued a statement on behalf of himself and the First Lady Melania Trump, joining the nation in celebrating the life of Barbara Bush. As a wife, mother, grandmother, military spouse, and former First Lady, Mrs. Bush was an advocate for the American family. Amongst her greatest achievements, says President Trump, was recognizing the importance of literacy as a fundamental family value that requires nurturing and protection. She will be long remembered, he says, for her strong devotion to country and family, both of which she served unfailingly well. Another statement also coming in from former President Bill Clinton. He says Barbara Bush was a remarkable woman. She had grit and grace, brains and beauty. She was fierce and feisty in support of her family and friends, her country and her causes. She showed us what an honest, vibrant, full life looks like. Hillary and I mourn her passing and bless her memory.
Peter, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's go now down the line to Bradley Blakeman, who's a friend of Barbara Bush and her husband for 35 years. He's also in Bush Senior administration. How will she be remembered, would you say?
I think she'll be remembered as the consummate second and first lady. She had a mission, and that was to support her husband, but also to support literacy at home and around the world, making sure every child and adult could read and write. She was a lady of character. She was a lady of principle. She was a lady who cared. She cared about her family, her immediate family. She cared about her political family, and she cared about the American family. And I think what you saw with Mrs. Bush is what you got. She's the same person through the years that I knew her, and I think the American people came to appreciate how genuine and real she was.
And she was the epitome of the family matriarch, wasn't she? Quite apart from what her husband achieved, what two of her sons achieved. I think the figures are, 5 children, 17 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren.
Yeah, I mean, she was the grandma, she was great-grandma, she was mom, and she was even a mom to us on the road. She would praise us when we did right, and she'd scold us when we did wrong.
What would you say to her causes? There was a political journey involved there, wasn't there? In her early years, she was quite a liberal.
She was, but I think she came to realize that the Republican principles of less government and more opportunity for individuals really is something that she really took a hold of. And she also realized that she wasn't the person elected, that her husband and her son were elected, both sons. The other son was the governor of Florida, and her grandson is a high official in the state of Texas. So Mrs. Bush understood that her place was to support the elected officials the best she could, and she did that, I think, brilliantly.
Just personally, in a family setting, what was she like to be around?
She was just somebody who cared for others. It was never about her. It was always about the president. It was always about people other than herself. She didn't like people to make a fuss over her. She would call you over and say, "Did you get something to eat today? Would you like anything?" And here you were serving her as a support staff, and yet she was worried about whether you were eating right and whether you got enough sleep. And that I would get notes from her all the time, just being appreciative of what we do.
Bradley, I know you've lost a friend of 35 years standing. Thank you very much for talking to us right now.
My pleasure. Take care.
Speaking to Michael Jones, former speechwriter for George Bush. He's in Philadelphia right now. What are your memories of Barbara Bush?
Her legacy is this extraordinary family that she was surrounded by until the very end, and the impact she had, obviously, on her husband, who was really the only relationship that she had in her life. I think she used to joke, as I recall, that he was the first man she kissed, and 7-decade-plus marriage with him, and then obviously 5 extraordinarily successful children, 2 of whom I think are well known to the world, and 3 of whom are less known, but are equally successful in their own right. Less known is the fact that they lost a child to leukemia at the age of 3. It was very emotionally devastating, understandably so, to her, and she spoke about that in very moving terms. She was an unpretentious woman, I think, for someone that was First Lady of the country. She defended herself for wearing fake pearls. She loved her Springer Spaniel that she actually included in her official portrait, as I recall. And she championed this idea of literacy, which I think all of us sort of subconsciously knew was an important issue, but honestly, it didn't really have a whole lot of people out front that were really speaking to it at the time. And it was a moment when the United States was, trying to continue to focus on the importance of reading and learning. And she brought a great deal of attention to that issue at a critical moment, just like her predecessor, Nancy Reagan, did to the war on drugs and to saying no to drugs in the administration before her.
Yeah, and we've been reporting in her early years, of course, she spoke out against segregation and backed a more liberal view on abortion rights, quite apart from the causes she fought in her own right. Of course, there were enormous events swirling around her, weren't there? The first Iraq War, the Iran-Contra scandal.
Yeah, I think the extraordinary pressure of the presidency requires a spouse that is equally strong. And she certainly was that for George Bush. And importantly, forgotten to some, is the fact that George Bush didn't enter public life as vice president. He had a great career in equally important jobs before that. He was a member of Congress. He was our ambassador to China. He ran the CIA and the RNC. He was our ambassador to the United Nations for a period of time. So really over multiple decades, he held some of the highest positions in American public life, and she was right by his side throughout all of that.
You have personal memories of her?
Well, I think ultimately it was one of her warmth and caring and her authenticity. And sadly, inside the Washington Beltway, authenticity is sometimes missing, but this was a real woman who came as advertised, and she was strong, but she never really sort of lost her core values and focus, and was an intriguing woman, off the beaten path in some ways. I mean, I think I can recall that even though she attended one of the more elite colleges in the United States, Smith College in Massachusetts, she actually took a job in a factory over the summer, and some of her family were sort of questioning that, but she was a woman who felt comfortable really around anyone and everyone. And she obviously brushed shoulders with some of the most powerful people of the world of that generation, but also with, everyday Americans routinely in the very important job of First Lady.
Michael Johns, thank you so much for sharing all that with us. Let's take you on to what may well be the other big breaking story of the past few hours. High-level talks, it seems, are already underway between North Korea and the United States. That is according to President Trump, though contrary to early reports, it now seems the president himself has not spoken with Kim Jong-un. The Washington Post is claiming that Mike Pompeo, current head of the CIA and Mr. Trump's nominee to be the new U.S. Secretary of State, America's top diplomat, made a secret visit to Pyongyang over the Easter weekend, and he allegedly did meet the North Korean leader. The Reuters news agency is reporting confirmation of that from a senior American official, apparently independently. In a moment, our correspondent, Barbara Pladasha. First, this is what Mr. Trump had to say just a short while ago.
We've had talks at the highest level. Well, let's leave it a little bit short of that. But we have had talks at the highest level, yes. And it's going very well, but we'll see what happens.
There was some confusion about what Mr. Trump was actually saying. He at one point responded to a barrage of reporters' questions with the answer yes. And one of those questions had been, did you speak directly with Kim Jong-un? But the White House later clarified he had misunderstood the question, and in fact, he hadn't spoken directly to anyone, but there had been communication at the highest level. And now we have a report from the Washington Post, which is quoting 2 anonymous sources say that, in fact, the CIA director, Mike Pompeo, paid a secret visit to North Korea at the Easter weekend to lay the groundwork for the forthcoming summit, and he did visit and meet Kim Jong-un. And it's notable that about a week after that, the White House made it public that Kim Jong-un had directly confirmed that he was willing to talk about denuclearization, put that on the agenda. So it seems, based on this report, that that did come in a face-to-face conversation with the CIA Director, Mike Pompeo, who, of course, has been nominated to be Secretary of State and is waiting to be confirmed as such.
BBC's Barbara Pladash there. Stay with us on BBC News if you can. Much more to come, including this. Stormy Daniels speaks out again. The porn actress reveals a sketch of the man she says threatened her to keep quiet about having sex with Donald Trump.